Welcome to the Audible presented by Trader Joe's. I'm Stuart Mandel, joined by my colleagues from The Athletic, Bruce Feldman and Ralph Russo, to wrap up Week 11 of the college football season. Don't forget, you can always watch the Audible on YouTube at Audible Show, including this Sunday morning episode every week, which is live on YouTube at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, guys. We've got a lot to get to today. It was a very fun day. Texas Tech made a statement. Lincoln Riley, it started Friday night with Lincoln Riley's weird fake punt decision. We're going to get into play. We're going to get into that, a lot more. But let's start in the Big Ten, where there were two dramatic finishes, guys. Indiana driving the field to survive at Penn State with a remarkable catch. Oregon surviving at Kinnick. I'll start with you, Ralph. I'll start with the question that The Athletic asked. The catch, Omar Cooper Jr.'s toe-scraping touchdown catch, does that rank up for you as like one of the best college football catches you've ever seen?
Without question, especially because of not just degree of difficulty, getting pushed out of bounds and still managing to get that foot down was remarkable. He almost seemed to be like floating. But also circumstances, right? You got an undefeated team. If he doesn't make that play, I think they might have one more down there, but nonetheless, it's the game-winning touchdown on an incredible, last-minute, 2-minute drive. So without question, it was fun to sort of go through the archives of trying to come up with other great catches that we've seen. I came up with J.J. Wharton from UCF against Temple in 2013.
Yeah, that was a good pull
to me. Yeah. So, but I mean, it's all relative, right? And they're all relatively recent because this is where our memories go. But Bruce, incredible catch, maybe the catch of the year, maybe the player of the year, maybe the drive of the year. But then Oregon almost did the same. Oregon maybe almost trumped it to a certain degree because it was because Oregon has a little less leeway in the playoff race, and Dante Moore's throw might have been to throws what Omar Cooper Jr.'s catch was to catches.
Yeah, the thing that kind of wowed me about Omar Cooper's catch was you can see all kinds of crazy catches by receivers. And a lot of times people go, you know what? It's the gloves. The gloves are making the difference now or whatever, whether everybody's trying to do an OBJ catch. I mean, as a dad of a young receiver, it's like your Instagram is cluttered with receiver school stuff and all these other different things. But what he did in a game, because I asked Coach Pete this, I was like, how often do you guys practice something like that, right? And I think what you saw was remarkable body control from a former high school basketball star to get both feet in, by the way, not just one. It almost looked like his head was by the goalpost. It was a little bit of an optical illusion. But as you said, Ralph, he was getting pushed back out of the back of the end zone, which is legal by the defensive back. The throw by Dante Moore that's honestly why Oregon did not look for a quarterback in the portal, because he has rare arm talent. The accuracy is honestly, it reminds me a little bit of CJ Stroud in terms of like just the ball placement and the wow throw. Like he had a great day. It's a really good defense that they went up against in bad weather conditions, by the way. But that throw to lead them on the field goal winning drive, as you said, they did not have much margin for error. I mean, win or lose, it feels like Indiana is going to the playoff either way. But Oregon, they lose that game, all of a sudden it might be different calculus too.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, did we all pick? No, two of us, I think, picked Iowa to upset Oregon, at which point they would have started to be on pretty shaky ground. I want to give Dan Lanning and the Ducks, I feel like I'm always coming on here and being like, I got to give them more credit. But Oregon is no longer just flash and big play. Like they can win I feel like they can win any kind of game now. This was kind of the proof of that. I do want to get back to the Indiana drive at the end. I found a very annoying thread in the comments to Final Thoughts this morning of, well, if Indiana was that good, they wouldn't have needed to do that to beat a 3-6 Penn State team. I'm like, are you serious? I know Penn State's got a bad record, but they still have Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Like all those guys are still there. It's a 100,000 seat stadium. This is a team the exact same team that took Oregon to overtime there, and we were all coming on here and singing Oregon's praises the next day. And it's just hard to win on the road, Ralph. I mean, am I making too much a big deal of this? I just think what Mendoza did in particular, he gets sacked on the first play of that drive. They have no timeouts. He still recovered to drive them 87 yards for the game-winning touchdown. I don't care that Penn State's 3-6. That was remarkable.
There are probably, I'm going to go off the top of my head here. I would say there is probably 10 guys on that Penn State defense who will get some type of NFL experience, right? Like Penn State's got players everywhere. Yeah, I'm not saying they'll all be first-round draft picks or 10-year veterans, but they will probably all, at some point or another, get a look in the NFL. My point is, Penn State is a very weird 3-6 team. 5 of their losses have been by a combined 16 points. So even within the fact that they've had this very weird season and Northwestern, UCLA, like they've been on the verge. They lost to Iowa by 1. They went to overtime with Oregon. I understand that was with Aller. So Penn State is not your average 3-6 team.
They also have the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country who, 2 months ago, people would have said, who's the best defensive coordinator in college football? And Jim Knowles probably would have gotten a lot of votes.
Yeah, it's just they're a weird team to judge just on record. I tied a weird tweet or a funny tweet yesterday about like if Auburn and Penn State played, they would both find a way to lose by 3. Neither of those teams is as bad as their record, but they just have lost a lot of games because they're weird teams. But neither of them are like bottom feeder type teams. So yes, what Indiana did yesterday is really impressive. Fernando Mendoza's Heisman moment. I know some people take issue with that because he didn't necessarily have a great game, but he played a great drive. And does that really make for a Heisman candidacy or something like that? But we can get into sort of broader Heisman candidate stuff too, Stu.
I mean, after he threw the touchdown, I was like, well, I guess I know who's going to be number 1 on my Heisman straw poll ballot this week. Doesn't mean he wrapped up the Heisman by any means. I'm gonna throw some Heisman love for Diego Pavia in a little bit, but let's pivot, Bruce, to the top. I feel bad for the Big 12. That was the only top 10 game in the country yesterday, and I feel like everybody was watching Indiana Penn State when that game was on. It's just kind of the nature of the Big 12 and the lack of brand power. But I don't care about brand power. Texas Tech, as I've been saying on here for quite some time, is good. And they destroyed BYU. Their defense suffocated BYU, undefeated BYU. And, that's what they did to Utah as well. I thought it was a real showcase game, Bruce, for Jacob Rodriguez, David Bailey, like that whole Texas Tech defense that, hey, they went out and paid many, many millions of dollars for that defense, and it's paying off.
Yeah, quick shout out to our buddy Max Olson. He did a really good story, I thought, on that defensive line, especially the $7 million defensive line. That has gotten a lot of return on investment. I thought it dawned on me because I saw the highlights yesterday, so much of that game. And in our highlight package, we had Patrick Mahomes being at the game. And Lord knows there was never a defense anything remotely like that in Lubbock when Mahomes was the quarterback. I mean, if there was, Cliff Kingsbury would still be the head coach in Lubbock if he wanted to be. So I think when you looked at what was most impressive, they're the only team, and this was a good note that I think Texas Tech had put out, they're the only team that has beaten two teams that were in the top 15, and they were both by 20-plus points. As you said, one was Utah, one was BYU. This is the 5th time they've shut out an opponent for the first 3 quarters of the game. I mean, the offense is good. The defense is outstanding. I mean, we'll see if it gets to we had this little pet peeve thing about the word great. We'll see if it proves to be great in the playoff. I think we still, got to see a lot more from them. But what I started to think about as we watched this beatdown was we talked about how, there's probably a good chance for 2 teams in the Big 12 to get in the playoff. After watching it yesterday, I go back to Stu and I had a conversation before you were with us, Ralph, with Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12, I don't know, 15 months ago, Stu, and I remember asking him about like, do you guys need somebody to separate? It's good to have all the crazy competitive balance, but if you do not have one elite team, people can hold that against you. It feels like right now they have an elite team. Does that mean after watching that, now whoever wants to jump on this, do you think right now that we might be looking at the way this is starting to set up as a one bid conference?
Well, I thought the scenario that needed to play out was the loser yesterday wins the title game. Didn't matter who won yesterday, but the two teams needed to play yesterday, play again the title game, split, and that sets up for both of them getting in. And I still think that's the case. I think Texas Tech has been so dominant that I think if they were to get to the title game, run the table, lose to, let's say, BYU, they have been so dominant that they will position themselves in the rankings well enough so that a loss in the title game, I don't think, will knock them out. The problem is now that game was so lopsided, it's sort of hard to figure out how BYU bounces back and beats them. I hate to, one game does not define what the possible results are between two teams. And BYU's defense hung in there. Like it held Texas Tech to like 5 yards per play. There were 3 turnovers. So I could see a path for this game being a little more competitive next time. And you get a couple of turnovers the other way and all of a sudden BYU wins. But I still think that the Big 12 can get 2 teams in if BYU can win, or maybe even Cincinnati get to the conference championship game and win it. The problem is Texas Tech looks so much better than these other teams. It's hard to find a path where anybody knocks off Texas Tech in the title game.
The team that first of all, I think if Texas Tech to me is a no-brainer at large team if they don't lose between now and the conference championship game.
I would agree.
But like you said, can somebody actually beat them? Well, first of all, they're not unbeatable, right? They did lose a game at ASU. Granted, they didn't have their quarterback that day, but I don't think that was the only reason. No, here's the thing. The team that I would think might be able to beat them in a rematch is Utah. We talked about them like they've steamrolled everybody else. But I don't think they can get in because they lost to both BYU and Texas Tech. So they're kind of boxed out. Maybe if there's some crazy tiebreaker, I don't know, for the second spot. But I think Texas Tech, I said in Final Thoughts, is a team that can get into the playoff and win some games. I didn't feel that way about ASU last year. To their credit, they'd almost beat Texas. Because I think, first of all, I don't think anybody in the SEC is unbeatable this year by any means. And I think Texas Tech's defense is what we would have used to describe as a quote-unquote SEC defense. I don't think the SEC has a monopoly on great defenses anymore.
Can I pick up on, we have a comment, guys, from El Classic 15, who's been a loyal listener or viewer of this show.
And comment.
With the mess in the ACC, is there a world where they get no bids to the playoff? No, not this one.
Yesterday I thought, can we give their bid to a different conference?
Oh, wait a second. So I actually referenced this in my column last night, my CFP column last night. I don't think it's completely outside the realm of possibility. It is a pretty big long shot, especially after San Diego State just got crushed by Stu's Rainbows in Hawaii, because it took another team off of another possible conference winner off of the table. You got to remember, it's not those 5 highest ranked conference champions. That's no conference affiliation. So it could conceivably go to any conference, right?
But
the ACC does not have some kind of...
I mean, as much as I like to dunk on the ACC, USF, I think, is probably in the pole position now in Group of 5, and they got killed by Miami. So it's not like there's any case right now to be made. Yeah.
Duke is still very much alive to win the ACC, even though they
Duke, which just lost to UConn and has lost to, got blown out by Tulane.
They could absolutely get into the ACC championship game, win the ACC championship game, and then all of a sudden you're going, oh, wait a second. Do we have to consider JMU? And again, JMU lost to Louisville. So we are talking very, very big stretch here. The weird thing about the ACC is, its best playoff teams, contenders, are not, well, Georgia Tech is still in pretty good shape. I think it's still Georgia Tech, Miami, and probably Pittsburgh, considering their end of the schedule. But they're not necessarily the teams in the best position to get to the championship game. So it creates this strange dynamic where they actually have teams that look like they would be pretty good playoff contenders, but they could all get locked out of the ACC championship game. So I think that's where there's a little confusion here, where you wonder if like the ACC champion could get left out, but is it still possible that Miami runs the table and gets in?
This is all very far-fetched. I mean, the committee didn't even have a group of 5 team in the rankings last week, but no, what we're talking about now, though, we should just put it on the record, if you will. So this chaos in the ACC standings is because on Saturday night, so I've been trying to make up for the YouTube TV thing any way I can. I finally tried the ESPN app because I found out I could get it free from one of the other streaming services. The ESPN app multi-view at night is basically just the ACC network. It was 4 screens
helpful,
and 3
helpful at the time though.
One of them was LSU, Alabama, and the other 3 were ACC games. However, 2 of those ACC games were their 2 highest ranked teams losing. Virginia goes down 16-9 at home to Wake Forest. Kind of a weird game. Chandler Morris got hurt early on. Don't know if that would have saved them or not. By the way, good job Wake Forest get into a bowl game in Jake Dicker's first season. And then we came on here and sang Jeff Brom's praises a couple weeks ago, and Ralph was like kind of trying to pump the brakes a little bit. Jeff Brom loses at home in overtime to Cal with a team that, what a wasted opportunity, guys. I thought after last week, I bet they're going to rise up and win the ACC. They only had the 1 close loss to Virginia. They beat Miami. You can't lose
without their star running back, though.
Right.
Yeah.
That actually does make a difference with that team. Right?
Yes, still though. Come on.
But Justin Wilcox,
go beat Cal at home.
Yeah,
Justin
Wilcox.
I feel like you're looking into my soul right now, Ralph.
Yeah.
So we now
I'm not here for making excuses for Louisville today.
I'm not making. Yeah, let's not make excuses. Let's not make excuses for any of these ACC teams. It should not be this bad. By the way, the third multi-box, whatever you want to call it, it was like this Florida State Clemson game that felt like it was taking place in some zombie alternate universe. Like, how are these 2 programs playing such a bad, irrelevant game on the ACC network? And I'm more interested in a Virginia Wake Forest game that was going on at the same time. So let's just set it up here. We have a 5-way tie in the loss column. Although Duke is 4-1, everybody else is 5-1. That's Georgia Tech, Virginia, Pitt, SMU. The fact that SMU is tied for first, having lost to 2 Big 12 teams, is just what a mess.
Stu, the thing you read about Northwestern reminds me a little bit of those. Duke reminds me a little bit of those Northwestern teams that Pat Fitz had, where they couldn't beat anybody in non-conference, and they would lose to like these kind of meh teams, but then they would play on the weak side of the Big Ten West as it was, and win, and end up having a chance to play for the conference championship. You
That's
watch
exactly
this.
What it is.
Again, this reminded me a little bit of some of the earlier games. With them. I don't know. Like, I watched some of the Miami game. Miami's probably not going to have Mark Fletcher, their leading rusher, back anytime soon, or maybe not this season. And without him, maybe they found a running back last night in Gerard Pringle. He came through, but Pitt will be the linchpin of this, as much as Ralph, probably makes him feel good or bad about it, right? Because of what they had in the last month. You still do have, by the way, that Georgia Tech game, which is fitting because, like, if Georgia Tech wins it would certainly help their playoff bid, but it probably wouldn't do anything for their ACC title hopes.
Yeah, I think the irony could be, and this is where I think I may be. You're right. 2 G5 teams is highly unlikely, but hear me out with this. I think the ACC champion could end up being a team that gets in, but is also not the best ACC team. because of the way this is playing out with who's getting locked out of, who could be locked out of the playoff, of the ACC championship game. So I could see a world where like Miami doesn't get in at 10-2, but they've got this win against Notre Dame, but they have to take, maybe Virginia still gets in and wins the conference, and they get like squeezed out. Miami gets squeezed out by whatever the ACC champion is. It's just it's a weird situation in the conference. It also begs like, hey, we really need divisions back, because deciding these conferences with these crazy tiebreakers and all these teams don't play each other is madness and kind of stupid. So
the ACC's best hope, I think, for two teams, barring Georgia Tech knocking off Georgia, which they almost did last year, would be for Pitt to beat Notre Dame, which then a little undermines Miami's win over Notre Dame, but then for Miami to beat Pitt. Or for... Yep.
Well, and that accomplishes two things, right? It helps their candidacy and it knocks Notre Dame out of the playoff. Ralph, I'm curious.
Yeah.
When you did your AP ballot and you're, dealing with head-to-head, did Virginia beating Louisville, who beat Miami, keep Miami behind those two teams?
No, I mean, we went through this last week.
Yeah, can't do it.
And I am still in the same position of everybody else. I'm going to post my ballot and people are going to laugh at me because I have Miami ahead of Notre Dame and ahead of Texas and ahead of Oklahoma because Miami beat Notre Dame, guys.
Like, right. You're in a whole other sphere. You're not dealing with like 16 through 18. You got Miami much higher than that.
I've just tossed Louisville and Virginia aside because I know those teams are both fraudulent. So but I'm comparing Miami to the group that includes Notre Dame, Texas, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, to BYU. And if you're going to compare them with those teams, the fact that they beat Notre Dame still has to be relevant. So I know I've just resigned myself to the fact that either the results will play out and either consensus will come to me and everybody else will have to conform to me, or I will conform to consensus, but we're not going to get along here. We're just not going to see eye to eye, me and consensus.
So we mentioned the group of five in passing, but I do want to bring up this I just feel like it's unbelievable race in the American this year. And by the way, for anybody who gets hung up on SEC bias, note that I'm going to bring up USF and Memphis and Tulane before we've talked about any SEC games. So we had this double, wasn't an upset. USF just destroyed. No, let me go back a week. UTSA destroys Tulane, screwing up their chances. But then USF turns around and destroys UTSA. And then the next 2 days later, the next day, that game was on Friday. On Saturday, Memphis, who was the committee's, we don't have a top 25 team, but they would be our team last week, goes down. So we have like an ACC type situation at the top of the American with Navy, USF, Tulane, North Texas, and East Carolina all tied with one loss. I would not put all those teams in the same bucket, guys. Who is if you had to, put your money on the line right now, who ends up winning that conference, Ralph?
I think USF, though I think, and please don't ask me to show my work here, I believe North Texas has the best chance of reaching the title game because of the way the schedule sets up, and USF plays Navy next week. By the way, shout out to Navy for being like, we are not letting Notre Dame beat the living hell out of our quarterback when we have like more important games to play. So Blake Horvath, you're sitting this one out. We'll get back to you next week. I just appreciate Navy like just putting its cards on the table and being like, yeah, we're not doing this. We're not doing this. So anyway, like I still think USF is the best team of that bunch. USF, who also beat the hell out of UNT a few weeks ago, Bruce.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I have the most faith right now in USF. Honestly, I think it's because they have the most consistent quarterback play. You kind of know what you're getting with Byron Brown. He's a big physical, dual threat guy, and he fits the offense that Alex Golish has. You watch Tulane. I watched a lot of that game Friday night. That was good Retzlaff. He was like 14 of 15, a lot of deep shots. The one incompletion was a drop pass. He also ran for a touchdown. But he also had the games where he was he and the whole team just didn't look like they were ready to play against UTSA. I just feel like from a consistency standpoint, I have a little more faith in the Bulls than what I think you get from Tulane, which you get certainly from Memphis. North Texas is interesting. We don't probably talk about them enough because they kind of feel like they're new to this like area of upper mid major, if there is such a thing. But I think obviously Eric Morris and Drew Mestamaker have a good thing rolling. The other subplot here is all four of these programs are run by coaches who are all, from everything Ralph and I have heard, in the mix for a lot of other jobs to move up, whether it's Morris, John Summerall at Tulane, Ryan Silverfield at Memphis, and obviously Alex Golish at USF. So it kind of complicates it, but I feel like the American is considerably better than the Mountain West. And the one team we should probably throw into, since we're talking playoff, is James Madison is really, I know Signetti's moved on, but Bob Chesney's done a really good job there. And they're not far off the radar in this discussion at this point.
But I don't know how they.
Can I throw one thing in, Stu?
Yeah.
Sorry, real quick about USF. It's the one team out of that conference, and like I was looking at their SP Plus ratings, I think they're 60th nationally in defense, which doesn't sound great, but compared to the rest of the conference, that's actually pretty good. They're the one team in that conference that actually like has a pretty. When they play within the conference, their defense can be pretty problematic.
I mean, they've had a good season. Right. I mean, USF, they beat Florida, they beat Boise handily.
They killed Boise. Yeah.
Yeah. They won in the swamp. Yes, they had a bad loss to Miami, but Miami's, I mean, that's not a bad loss. That's just it was a blowout loss, though. Their one conference loss was by 3 points in the last minute at Memphis. But to your point, Ralph, like they play Navy, they could lose to Navy. Whereas North Texas, who, getting all these schedules mixed up. North Texas, who USF beat handily, like their only games left are UAB, Rice, and Temple. So it's possible North Texas gets in it just because they don't get knocked off along the way, and some of these other teams do. About James Madison, I don't know how you justify that because these American teams are playing such tougher conference schedules. Now, if they all lose again and they're all 10-2 and James Madison, maybe, but I just assume the American team will be there. And since we all just agreed that USF is the best team, they will probably lose. So guys, I actually went to a college football game in the stands on Friday night. I don't know if you know this.
My God, slumming it, Stu.
Yeah.
Jeez. Spending the Friday night with the commoners. I can't believe it.
I'll get into that in a second. My alma mater, Northwestern, played a Friday night game at USC, which is a 45-minute flight for me. Bunch of my good friends from college either lived there or were coming in for it, so I decided to join them and fly back the next morning. It's not that I was slumming it. I actually had a great time. I like being amongst the people. But the people, that doesn't make it sound any better. It sounds worse.
I
like being out of the press box and enjoying, even when and you guys like, when you cover a game, don't you prefer that it's an open press box? Because you actually feel like you're part of the crowd, not like it's like the Ohio State press box is hermetically sealed.
I feel like Stu walked into the Coliseum and looked at other people in college garb the way I look at the meerkat at the San Diego Zoo.
Actually, the USC fans around us were very nice. Mm-hmm. It was almost like, I don't mean to go into a tangent about this, but having covered a lot of games in the Coliseum when Pete Carroll was there and it was rocking, it almost felt like these people just like, oh, this is a fun thing to do on a Friday night. Like, maybe it's because it was Friday. Maybe it's because it's Northwestern, not a big opponent by any means. And maybe just because like USC's in this place where they're good, but not Pete Carroll good. Anyway, where I sympathize with the paying public is, and I felt this way when I went to a 49ers game a couple years ago, it's very hard to follow what's going on when you can barely hear the PA person. We were like down in the lower corner. Anything on the other side of the field, you couldn't really see. I don't have a flip card in front of me. It's not like I know these teams by heart. And so I bring this up because there was a controversial play in this game where USC ran a fake punt early in the second quarter, and Lincoln Riley did this by bringing in their third string quarterback, Sam Heward, wearing the same number as their punter. Nobody noticed that, including, of course, those of us in the stands. I didn't find out till like 10 minutes later that happened. But even Jason Benetti, calling the game, did not realize that wasn't the punter out there. Bruce, you did a little reporting on this. At the time that it happened, or I'm sorry, at the time that I found out 10 minutes later that this had happened, I was like, that can't be legal, can it? I think you're muted.
You're muted, Bruce.
Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
So on Saturday morning when I came back to the studio, a couple of my colleagues were like, Pereira came in here and was mentioning how like that Mike Pereira, Fox's rules expert, came in and basically said, hey, that wasn't legal at all and actually should have been a 15-yard penalty. And at some point we were going to talk about it on air, and then it was just a hectic day. So I went in and talked to him for a little while and explained to my editors what kind of he said. And it was basically this, because he's wearing the exact same jersey number of the punter, the fact that he lined up behind center, whether it's like in punt formation, whether he punted or not, is deceptive. You cannot have two players wearing the same number who play the exact same position. And he went in to punt, whether he punted or not. Pereira said was not the issue, and it should have been a 15-yard penalty. He said it's not really on. People are like, how did they miss it? Because I asked him that, and he goes, you got to remember, USC's a team with no names on the back of the jerseys, and he's like, how much are the officials going to know what the third string quarterback's face looks like compared to the punter? It's just not that. It's clearly a deceptive play. Now, somebody else I work with had pointed out they had this play in and they thought they were going to run it against Michigan like a month ago. Situation never came up. I guess the circumstance didn't fit. They didn't do it. So they broke it out against Northwestern. I know for some USC fans are like, did we really need to do that against Northwestern kind of thing? But at that moment, as Stu saw, like Northwestern was running it down their throats in I think they were averaging like 9 yards a carry in the first half. And at that point, it was a big momentum swing. That play happened. It was kind of, I don't say laughable. It was a little bizarre because as I had put out a link to our story, I put Pereira's Twitter handle in there, and I started getting a bunch of USC fans lecturing Mike Pereira about the rules. And I was like, okay, or whatever. And then it kind of devolved from there.
Can I ask a question here? Do you think Lincoln knew he was breaking, or USC coaches knew that they were breaking a rule there? Because my guess is they probably did not.
I would think they probably didn't either. Yeah.
Yeah. That rule
Lincoln made a point
of way.
Yeah, Lincoln made a point of saying that they had actually updated the roster weeks earlier, so that it wasn't. I don't know if that's true, but that it wasn't a secret. But if it is, maybe they did know it was a rule, but as Bruce said, it's a completely unenforceable rule. There's no way to enforce that.
It's also by the nature of, okay, we're going to have him wear the exact same jersey number as the punter. That one seems like it's, out of the deceptive, like just by nature of that, you're saying, okay, you're clearly looking to try to deceive the opponent.
Well, anything else wouldn't have been, if he'd gone out there wearing number 79, nobody would say, oh, that's deceptive. I mean, it's that it was the exact same jersey number on purpose.
Yeah, it was weird. And again, like the way the rule is written, it's like two guys can't play the same position, but he is not listed as a punter on the
But he's lined up in punt formation.
But it's that they played the same position in the course of the game, right? That's what
totally understand. Yeah. Totally get that. But again, like I do think that there's enough ambiguity there that makes me believe that, like, I don't know if the USC wasn't trying to pull one over, so to speak. Well, they were trying to pull one over, but I don't think they knew that they were blatantly breaking a rule. And it's a tough rule for, as you said, for officials to.
But I think it's one of those things where they will, so it wasn't just Pereira. There's other former professional officials who are in that kind of bullpen we have up there. And the other longtime official had said, usually you'll ask, hey, are there any trick play? I remember this going back, bringing up Braum again. I remember he had like a trick play in a bowl game, and it's like, they'll probably give somebody a heads up
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it's coming. And Pereira said, or one of them said, usually whenever you ask, people will say like no. They'll just like not have anything that rises up. In that case, you would have thought if it was really a borderline thing, they would have done that.
All right, SEC bias, folks. Now we've mentioned a Northwestern game before we mentioned an SEC game. We're only 35 minutes into the show. The one I want to bring up is, last week Auburn scored 3 points against Kentucky. They fire their coach. They come out the next week and end up in a shootout, an absolute shootout with Vanderbilt that goes into overtime. Vandy wins. Diego Pavia, by the way, is still very high on my Heisman ballot. He's had the past 2 weeks, he's had great games. But in terms of playoff implications, I know Indiana stealing the show, but Vandy is, Ralph, still very much in the race. And in fact, the SEC, I keep waiting for the SEC to thin itself out a little bit. But we've got A&M and Alabama undefeated, in Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas with 1 loss, and then Vandy and Oklahoma have 2 losses, but are ranked high enough that they too are in contention for a playoff bid. They can't get 7 playoff bids, but are we starting to think about the possibility of 5?
I do think so. Now, the teams, there's a situation here where the teams who are in 90% or better by our colleague Austin Mock's projections, 90% or better are A&M, Ole Miss, Alabama, Georgia. Those teams, they have leeway to lose another game and a path to get in. So they're in really good shape. And because some of those teams play Oklahoma and Texas, there's a good chance that they could just eliminate those fringe teams. Or Texas could play its way in and Oklahoma could beat Alabama next week and make more of a logjam, right? The interesting one to me, as you said, is Vanderbilt because of the Heisman race with Pavia, but also, Vandy has Kentucky, after a week off, has Kentucky and Tennessee. Tennessee's certainly good enough, and Kentucky played a good game yesterday. Vandy is not at the point where I think you should mark in a victory for Vandy in any game.
No.
I don't think you should assume a victory for Vandy in any game, but there's definitely a path for Vandy to get through here. And I just, when you look at all the combinations, it suggests that 5 SEC teams is very, very much in play, unless the top 4 just, bulldoze the others and Vandy also loses.
I mean, if you really want to muck it up, I was looking at this last night. Think about this, right? Texas could beat Georgia next week, but Georgia would still be very much in it. Texas could then give Texas A&M its first loss. Oklahoma could give Alabama its first loss. Basically, Texas and Oklahoma could really, really mess things up. But Bruce, I don't know. Do you think there could be 5? B, if so, who is the 5th?
I do think there could be 5, and I wouldn't bet against Pavia leading them to 10-2. I mean, to me, that's certainly good enough. The team we haven't mentioned yet, who's super impressive every week, and that's Texas A&M. They rolled yesterday. So Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, who has a very I don't see Ole Miss stumbling. They're easily in.
I feel like they've basically clinched a playoff spot at this point.
Yeah, so it's those teams, those 4, and Vandy to me is I feel like if Vandy beats Tennessee, now if Tennessee beats Vandy, it's how does that play out? I don't. Again, Tennessee had a close home loss to Georgia. But I'm sitting there looking at how this schedule sets up, and I'm and there's Texas in there. I mean, can they all, let's say Vandy, handles their business. We got A&M, we have A&M, we certainly have Ole Miss. Those are the ones that feel like they're the safest to get in. Alabama. Is it a possibility that if it breaks a certain way, we could have 6 teams that are 10-2 or better? Like it's not. We're not that far away from the end of the regular season.
I think you can get 7 teams that are 10-2, right?
The answer is yes. When we talk,
who's the one I'm forgetting? Who's the other one who could be the one I'm?
Well, it could be Oklahoma too.
Oklahoma's the other
Texas,
one. Okay.
Vandy, and the 4 other teams could all get to 10-2. I was goofing around with Stu last week on the playoff post-playoff bracket show that. Could we have 7 SEC teams? And that's not really possible because then you'd have to eliminate Indiana or Ohio State. And I don't think we're getting to that world.
For real, though, Ralph, is you do the playoff, like, mathematically, can they get 6? I assume the first thing that has to happen is Notre Dame losing.
Oh, I think they could get 6. If you just play it out, 6, 2 from the Big Ten, that's 8. Then you still have 3 conference champions left. That gets you to 11. And
group of 5.
No. 3 including the group of 5. That's 3. That gets you to 11, and there's still another spot there that's lying around that could go to Notre Dame. So yeah, they could very easily get to 6. It would just require the Big Ten only getting 2. And listen, Oregon's got to play USC. They got to play Washington. They got to play Minnesota. That is not a gimme. That is not a gimme for Oregon. So sorry, SEC haters. There is a doomsday scenario.
I mean, I think
in the distance.
I'm starting to think that it's the 5 is probably going to happen at this point, right? I mean, that can they do? They can do. If the Big Ten gets 3, can the SEC still get 5?
Yes. I think that's
okay. Well, that seems pretty likely at this point because of what we just said. I don't know that Vandy ends up running the table. Also, Vandy's best win of the season.
It's not a long table right now, Stu.
Who's Vandy's best win of the season? Mizzou?
No, it would probably be Tennessee or Missouri, but nonetheless, I mean, they'd be a 10-2 team.
Man, how unfortunate would it be if Vandy does get to 10-2 and still gets left out?
They should not get.
They don't have the
out.
resume of the other.
They should not get left out.
Well, and let's not forget, we said last week we talked about how Texas could definitely do it at 9-3, right? So. And they beat Vandy. Oh, man, if Vandy gets boxed out by one of their own teams. All right. Shout out time, guys. I told these guys beforehand, I'm like, man, I'm going to have trouble narrowing this down. There's so many choices. But let's start with you, Ralph.
Okay, I'm going to start off with, I believe they were the only... I should have asked you this beforehand because Stu, I took one of Stu's shout out possibilities. I think Sam Houston was the only winless FBS team left in the country.
One of two.
And they went to Oregon State and pulled off a little CW magic under their new coach, Phil Longo. Sam Houston finally wins a game to get off the schneid this year. They will not be going 0-12. So shout out to Sam Houston. Also, kind of cool that Phil Longo gets his first victory at Sam Houston as head coach the same day Wisconsin finally breaks its long Big Ten losing streak and beats Washington in an upset that also hurt the Big Ten's chances of getting an extra playoff team in.
All right, I'm going to do my shout out for UConn quarterback Joe Fagnano. He helped them beat Duke yesterday, 37-34. And under the radar, he has now thrown 382 consecutive passes without an interception. That is the second longest run of, I don't want to say mistake-free quarterbacking, but interception-free quarterbacking in FBS history. He is closing in on former Louisiana Tech quarterback Colby Cameron's 444 interception-less streak that he had about 12 years ago. Also, Jim Mora has done an amazing job at UConn, and this is more proof of it, that they keep winning. They're now 7-3.
Can I just shout out Bruce for correctly pronouncing Fagnano, the GN, the yin sound, which is in Italian.
I feel like that's yes. Thank you,
Fagnano.
Stu and I are probably going to butcher how to talk about mozzarella, but I think
mozzarella. Come on, man, what are we doing here?
We know, at least I know that it's wrong how most of us say it.
Just to follow up on both of those real quick. First of all, whenever UConn succeeds, and they're succeeding a lot recently, Bruce, I just think of that when we had Jim Mora on the Audible, like right after he got hired. And I think we were both like, what are you thinking? Like, why would you take
Good
that
luck, Jim.
job? Good luck. And sure enough, he's bowl eligible for the third time in 4 years. And you mentioned it in passing, Ralph, but that Wisconsin field storming after they beat Washington in the rain was hilarious. I mean, I'm not a party pooper. Go to it, students.
Yeah,
Enjoy.
yeah.
Storm the field.
No judgment.
But it was just like, man, you guys used to win Rose Bowls, and now you're out here celebrating getting one Big Ten win. Wow, the times did change.
It's Wisconsin. Most of those people were drunk. Really, I mean, like we didn't Matt Brown from the Extra Points, not our Matt Brown, just publish something that Wisconsin is drinking more beer or selling more beer than any FBS program in the country since the rules have changed. So, again, no judgments. You do you, Win Madison. Go celebrate. It was perfect in the rain and wet.
Washington, by the way, was ranked. That was a top 25 win.
And the cool thing on that, by the way, for Fickle, two of the biggest stars were true freshman defensive players who were actually all over the field and running down one of the fastest quarterbacks in college football. That is at least something you could be optimistic about in the future.
And they did it basically without a quarterback. They've had like this Spinal Tap drummer kind of luck with their quarterbacks, and by the second half, maybe the second quarter, I can't remember, they were playing with a guy who was on the scout team. A freshman who had been on the scout team like last week, maybe the week before. My shout out goes to Brent Brennan, who Arizona's coach, he had such a bad first season there that the AD had to put out like a vote of confidence that she wasn't going to fire him after 1 year. And then I think he was probably Bruce at the top or near the top of our hot seat talk coming into the season. Well, they're bowl eligible. Arizona beats Kansas to get to 6-3. It is a kind of a light 6-3. They've beaten Hawaii, Weber State, K-State, Oklahoma State, Colorado, and Kansas. That's the beauty of unbalanced schedules these days. But it's a bowl game. It's a bowl. It's 6 wins. They're going to a bowl game. You don't have to worry about him getting fired. If anything, can he go save Oregon State? I mean, my goodness. Or maybe UCLA.
Wait, you're sending him to Oregon State from Arizona?
No, I realize
this is not a shout out. This is like a homie the clown.
Oregon State should have hired him 2 years ago. Like, that was dumb to promote Trent Bray. But anyway, well, I don't know, Bruce. Could he get the UCLA job?
It's possible. It's his alma mater. I know he has some connections there, and we'll see. I mean, the UCLA job is an interesting one for a variety of reasons. You could make the case that right now at Arizona, he probably has, I don't know, a clearer path to try to make a playoff. Like Arizona at least is on, I don't say level playing field, but it's not UCLA, and it's not where you have an AD and certainly on the hot seat where nobody wants the AD around, and you have financial challenges. But we'll see. But congrats to him for getting them bowl eligible, and I think he did a good job of rebalancing his staff and made some good hires, and it's paid off.
Yeah, he's a good coach. Remember, every episode of The Audible is on YouTube at Audible Show. We will be back on Tuesday to preview some games for next week, and we will see you next time.